What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Get 'em Podcast, where we talk about all the things that excite us, piss us off, and all the above in the gaming industry. I'm your host, Nick, with my co-host here, Stuart. How are we doing today, buddy?
Dude, I got my last final tomorrow, so I'm pretty excited. Get my break, nice relaxing moment. School's over for now, so heck yeah.
That'll be nice. And when do you go back? Not until January?
Yeah, it'd be second week of January, I think, something like that.
That's nice, man. You got any plans for your break, or?
Yeah, actually. So my family, i.e. my twin and my parents, are actually going to St. John's.
Oh, okay.
So technically we'll be going down to Texas for a few days because my brother's graduation. Then we'll go from there to Florida and then Florida to St. John's for a week or so.
Oh, wow. Well, that's cool. You got any plans of any games that you're going to be playing over the break, or any games you're trying to complete?
I really won't be around to be able to play anything around the break, just because I'll be away from my computer, away from my Xbox. But so no, not really.
I thought that you were just gone for a week. You're going to be gone longer than a week.
Well, it's going to be longer than that because it's a week in St. John's, and then there's about a week from traveling from Texas and all that, and then after that, I might be driving my brother from Texas to California. So it could be a long period of time where I'm not actually playing anything.
Man, you might be gone for a long time then.
It could be. There's potential for me to be gone for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be a great break for me, you know what I mean? No, I'm just playing.
Wow. Underappreciated.
I mean, here at the Get 'em Studios, we have no respect. I mean, you guys did say you were going to take the show away from me. So, I mean, disrespect happens, right?
Well, here's the thing. Honestly, around these parts, if respect is given, you wonder what's coming.
Yeah, exactly. That's very, very true. But with all of that aside, today we're talking about a subject that's very true and dear to, I believe, both of us. And that's about video game culture and if it causes, violence, or is video games a way to release stress. There's a lot of kind of up in the air things, especially I feel it's worse now than it's probably ever been. About people thinking that video games lead to violence. So my stance, I'll just put it out there for now, and then I'll argue the facts that I have. I believe that video games, depending on what kind of video game it is, and we'll get into that a little bit later, I feel like they're a great release for people, and I don't feel like it causes much violence. But again, we'll talk more about my stance here in a little bit. What's your stance on everything, Stu?
So I have a bit of a different background, I think, than most people will when it comes to this type of stuff. I mean, I've been playing video games pretty much my entire life, but I'm also studying criminal justice and psychology, right? So I have the half that people don't typically have, right? Like I have the knowledge on how to look at a study. I have the knowledge of what makes a study legit, and not just the Facebook facts that are so prevalent in today's culture. No one takes the time to sit down and actually look at actual facts. It's, oh, well, hey, I feel like it's this way. So because I feel like that, that's now a fact, literally the entire anti-vax movement is that.
Yeah.
And this isn't going to be, I don't want to get too far into it, but just research. It's not difficult.
Yeah. And that's true. And I mean, it even becomes kind of a scary situation when we actually have the president of the United States in one of his comments that he made, not super recently, but I would say within the year, he said this. He said, "We must stop the glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace. It is too easy today for troubled youth to surround themselves with a culture that celebrates violence. We must stop or reduce this, and it has to begin immediately." That's what Trump said, but that came after the very sad massacres in El Paso, Texas, and also in Dayton, Ohio, where 31 people were killed. And that's a very sad and unfortunate event that happens. But to blame it almost strictly on video games, or even a troubled youth society, I really don't. I feel like they just pass the buck off to whatever's easiest to pass the buck off to. It really doesn't go back to where were the parents, what were the parents doing, because the parents bought them these video games anyway, and they bought all these other things. What, I've been playing video games my whole entire life, and I've never once thought of doing anything insane like that.
Right.
So I don't think that, such a generalization of what somebody does because they said that it came from this, or they feel like it came from that. I don't know exactly if that is relevant in this situation. So I don't know.
You kind of hit the nail on the head initially. You said people are trying to find a scapegoat, and that's exactly it. It's always been like that. Before video games were a thing, back in the 60s, it was comic books.
Hmm.
There's always something, after the 60s, 80s maybe. I don't know exactly when, but movies at one point were blamed. Cartoons were blamed. It doesn't matter what it is. The media, the people who unfortunately are in charge of the policy making typically find an excuse.
Yeah.
And do I think video games have absolutely no correlation? I don't. I think there is some correlation. I think there could be. Do I think video games are the sole reason that these tragedies happen? Absolutely not. In fact, there's such um, a minor reason. I think they're negligible in
Yeah.
most cases. There hasn't been a study, an actual, peer-reviewed study that's come out and been like, yeah, video games are the cause of violence. There hasn't.
No.
And until that day comes, I don't think I can't fool myself into thinking something else. Like I'm not that type of person. Um, this article I found, it's on the National Health alphapublications.org. They quoted that about 43% of US adults often or sometimes play video games. That's 43%. That's nearly half the world population of adults. That doesn't even count kids. That's adults. If video games actually caused violence, don't you think we'd see so much more violence than there already is?
Exactly. So I feel like we said, that people use it as a scapegoat, but I also feel like, video games for me personally, they have helped me because when I was
Mhm.
younger and still today, I deal with anxiety, and everybody gets depressed every once in a while. Um, so when I was actually younger, I was actually diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and I used video games as kind of like a getaway kind of deal. Um, and this kind of is going to go back to, and this is kind of off subject, but going back to the VR that we talked about. In VR, they actually have, when you go into like what would be considered a home screen in on your Xbox or on PlayStation or anything like that. It's kind of like this tranquil place that you go into, and you can choose like if you want to be in the mountains or if you want to
Mm.
be like down on the beach, and it's really relaxing. And I just I feel like when every time that something bad happens, they just say, "Oh, it's the violence in the video games," and it's like not all video games are violent. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like there's some games that are actually, relaxing, like Minecraft. Just because I'm beating up bricks and wood and knocking down like digging for gold and diamonds, I'm not going to go out in the real world digging for gold and diamonds. I don't have
Right.
time. I
Mhm.
might, but like just realistically, no. Um, I don't understand it. Well, I do understand it in a sense why people want to kind of blame video games, because it's an easy way out. But I don't know. And my ideas and everything with this, since it's such a like a big topic for me, it really mixes my emotions when I'm
Mhm.
talking about this, because it makes me emotional, because I don't want kids to be robbed from such a great experience of making friends online and enjoying their time online. And it really is an emotional thing whenever people say video games are terrible for you. So
No, I agree, and it's interesting because the violent video games get so much attention,
they do.
but, this article I found, they basically did a survey that found that strategy and puzzle games are the most popular types among adults that play video games.
Yeah.
62%, which is no small number,
Mm-mm.
followed by adventure games, then shooting, and then role-playing games. Um, there's just this disconnect, and I don't understand it, right? We have this let me kind of back it up. So tobacco, pretty much everyone knows tobacco is bad for you, right? It causes
Yeah.
cancer, it does this, does that. Now, taking away the jewels and all that stuff that has tobacco in it, if that didn't exist, the tobacco use would pretty much be non-existent.
Yeah.
We were so close to completely getting rid of tobacco use. Um, I think because there's the understanding that, hey, this is really, really bad for you. And it's not just bad for you, it's bad for those people around you,
Hmm.
right? So it blows my mind how we can have that understanding. And then when it comes to something that's completely irrelevant and it's just made up, why can't we have that same understanding with video games?
Yeah.
Where it's so very obvious. I've talked to so many people our age who know this, right? And it sucks because like, "Oh, you're just too young, you're too naive, you don't actually know." You know,
Yeah.
you're told that by older people and, those who are making the policies and those who are pushing the agendas, where we all know that video games don't cause violence,
Yeah.
right? They don't have that correlation. It's literally what it's been said, mental health stuff, parenting,
Hmm.
and just kids being assholes,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
How many of the kids that committed the tragedies in school in a school shooting were bullied?
Yeah.
Pretty much all of them,
Yeah.
pretty much. And the simple answer is, "Oh, well, my angels wouldn't do that. They aren't mean like that. They would never bully someone. Oh, it must have been those violent video games that kid's been known to play."
Yeah.
Like, it's no, come on, grow up.
Well, I
You don't
also,
wanna fix anything.
yeah, and I feel like it's because, and it's mainly, I've never heard younger generations say that it's violent video games cause them problems. Normally the older generations that
Right.
say it, and I feel like because they've never, I grew up playing video games, and I feel like
Mhm.
they've probably never touched video games. So it's like
Right.
I feel like they don't understand exactly what video games are. It's not. I'm not playing Call of Duty like literally dismembering somebody in Call of Duty. Like I know there are some games like that, but in the recent event, Call of Duty was actually targeted, and it's like Call of Duty is a violent video game, but it's not like a violent video game when there is some pretty gruesome video games out there. But Call of Duty
Mhm.
is not that kind of game. It's literally a fast paced shooter.
Right.
So I feel like they think every violent video game is just to the extreme. Um, Actually, this was a little interesting thing that I found. And this comes from CNBC. It says there is no research that suggests there is a link between violent video games and these horrific acts of violence relating to the massacre in El Paso and also Dayton.
Mhm.
Patrick Markey, director of Interpersonal Research Laboratory and professor of psychology at Villanova University, said, "When we look at people that play video games, we actually see a dip in violent crimes and we don't see an uptick later on." So, I mean, I'm sure that this man, has had tons of background research and background in psychology, obviously, and other things. And this man is, he gets it. I mean,
Mhm.
it makes sense. If you study it and you see the video games for what they are, you realize that they don't cause anything crazy like that.
Well, the thing is, and the issue that I've had recently, especially after acquiring the knowledge from my criminal justice classes, my psychology classes, when it comes to understanding the actual research behind all this stuff, is the fact that that guy, unfortunately, seems to be a minority. And what I mean by
Hmm.
that is he takes what he finds, the research that he does, and then accepts that as the fact. Why? Because it's been backed up multiple times, it's been peer reviewed, and that's the finding that he has. He didn't go into it super biased of, "Oh, I'm gonna find violence caused by video games." He didn't find it. So then what was his answer? Video games don't cause violence. We have so many different people today who take research like that, and because it doesn't align with what they think is gonna happen, they throw it away and they discredit it. And that is so, so dangerous. It's
Yeah.
so dangerous. I mean, again, I don't want to keep referencing this, but anti-vax, that's exactly what it is. All right. They hold on to this um, quote unquote research that was done way back when by a doctor who had a bias to need to find that vaccines caused autism.
Yeah.
And that man, that doctor was discredited. his license was taken away, and he was proven wrong more times than any other research out there.
Hmm.
Yet they still hold on to it because that's what they want to believe. So I
Yeah.
think we really need to, as a society, figure out what do we want? Do we want to line our pockets and make us feel good about what we think we know, or do we want to take facts for facts and push forward?
Yeah, and just to clear up any kind of confusion, if you don't know what the anti-vax movement is, it's basically people that don't want to get their kids vaccinated for certain illnesses that we already have, cures for, basically. So just in case you were wondering exactly what that was, but yeah, I do agree with you. I feel like it is. It's uneducated. Just ideas, and
Mhm.
people feel like that this is the end all. But it's also like, okay, so video games, yeah, there's violence in video games. What about movies? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
they're like Saw. Saw is a very violent,
Mhm.
gruesome film, and people they're not saying, oh well, every Halloween my son watches this, so obviously it's going to cause him to be a killer. It's like that doesn't no, that's not exactly how
Right.
it works. And you know this. I mean, normally some kind of factor in their young life, childhood, young adulthood is what would cause, something
Mhm.
like that to transpire for them to do something, something that I would never see plausible. But I mean, it happens, and it normally comes from something deep seated in their life. So to say that video games cause it is just it's definitely a scapegoat. It's something just to get blame something else when what always gets me is when they say, "Oh, I knew this guy my whole life and I could never see him do it." It's like, but really? But like
Yeah.
there was something not right. Like he didn't just seem like a
Yeah.
little weird to you or something like that. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, I feel like if those people had closer friends and they had a closer family, I don't feel like things like this would happen. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know. I
No, I agree. You're 100% right. Oftentimes, the family environment might not even exist, right?
yeah,
But B, just is not healthy.
exactly.
And like you kind of were saying before, the video games oftentimes for most people are an escape.
Hmm.
And I don't want to get too personal here. I mean, you kind of mentioned it a little bit before about yourself, but um, about what's the year? It's 2019. So about 4-ish years ago, 5-ish years ago, I was actually diagnosed with MDD, which is major depressive disorder. Uh, and I was at college up in New York, and I was in a horrible just place mentally, emotionally. Um, I was in a bad relationship that ended really horribly, and I was not in a good place ever. And the only highlight that I had, I think the only thing that kept me sane and or alive. I don't want to go that far, but honestly, probably was the video games, right? I had a connection. I had friends that I could play with, that I could talk to. There was no judgment there, right?
Hmm.
And I honestly think that without that, I don't know. I don't know where I'd be today. There's a huge debate now as well, along the violence of the video games, is the addictiveness. And I think it's kind of a silly argument, and the reason I say that is because you could become addicted to absolutely anything.
Yeah.
Anything. I don't care what you say. You like cooking, you can become addicted to it. Gambling, obviously addictive. Drugs, addictive. And almost anything can be addictive, and the way that addiction is typically classified is a need to do something to get a hit of dopamine, essentially.
Hmm.
There's a physiological reaction in the brain that requires you to do this to get it.
Yeah.
And do I think that can be a problem? Sure, absolutely. Like I said, anything become addictive. But I think it's such a minuscule number that it's irrelevant. Um, and this article that I was reading it talked about the violence in video games, it talked about the addictiveness as well. And one thing that I found absolutely insane was the fact that the World Health Organization actually put this in an upcoming rendition of basically the DSM, which is kind of a classification book that psychologists and therapists can use to diagnose different things, from depression to bipolar disorder to OCD to ADHD to addictions. All of it is in this thing.
Mhm.
And they have taken and placed video game addiction in this book. And
I heard about that.
there's no research done on it, right? So they
Yeah.
have this small, and I was actually doing this in one of my classes. They have this small section in the book of things that could potentially be a thing. They don't know yet,
Mhm.
but it could potentially be a thing. And from my standpoint, I think that's that's super dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Because what is that going to do? That's going to make people prone to be diagnosed with something that they don't have, right? I think, and this is not the discussion to have on our, video game centered podcast, but today's mental health world,
It's in
people are so overdiagnosed.
it's in shambles. It
It's
is.
insane, dude. And I can say this because I've had OCD my entire life. So I've been in this realm for well over a decade. Probably going on 12, 13, 14 years. It's been a long time, right?
Mhm.
So people are very prone to be overdiagnosed. And then you have the other people, the other side of it of, "Oh, I'm depressed. I'm not doing that." Like, you're not depressed. You're looking for attention. You haven't been diagnosed.
Yeah.
So people throw these words around, and then you throw addiction around with video games. I don't know, man. That just seems crazy to me.
Yeah, and I mean, I can agree with you. Like, I feel like definitely in this society that a lot of people are overdiagnosed with things. I feel like I was listening to this one comedian, and he was like, if you say that you have depression, and then literally like a week later you feel fine, you weren't depressed. You were just
Right.
upset. And it's
Right.
like I get that. And I really feel like psychologists in general, I feel like will diagnose you basically with anything and everything. But that just goes to the doctor. Like if the doctor's just kind of being lazy and he really doesn't care about his practice and he's just trying to make money because there
Mhm.
are real problems out there. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, 100%.
Like actual addiction to, drugs and everything like that, alcoholism and
Mhm.
depression,
Yep,
anxiety,
yep.
split personality disorder. There's all kinds of things. But when it comes to addiction to video games, like, come on. That's like saying that I'm addicted to eating. I'm not addicted to eating. I literally have to eat. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not necessarily that I have to play video games, but I enjoy playing video games. Okay, so I'm going to say that, when, somebody comes home from a hard day's work, they want to, watch TV. They're going to watch TV for, 4 hours, 3 hours or whatever. They're going to binge Netflix. Are they addicted to Netflix just because I play video games for 4 hours or something when I come home from work? That doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Now, there is a point where if you're playing video games too much, I wouldn't consider it necessarily an addiction, more of just like a, you know, get the hell up and do something else. You might be a little lazy. If you're playing video games like nonstop 24-hour sessions, that's a little intense. But
Right. I do wanna make a distinction. I do think there are people out there who are, so that's an indisputable thing. If you're letting video games or literally anything else overtake stuff that you absolutely need to do, and your well-being because of this is plummeting,
mhm.
that's probably an addiction, right?
Yeah.
And you probably need to get help for it. But it's like you've said, like I said, the video games are addictive and everyone plays them is asinine.
Hmm.
It's insane. It doesn't make sense. Kind of what you were saying actually with the whole TV and just screens in general. This was researched, and it's been thrown around that like video games are to depression. People who play video games are depressed. X, Y, and Z,
Hmm.
and it's actually pediatrics that followed teens over the course of 4 years found that video games were not linked to depression. Social media and increased television use, on the other hand, were associated with symptoms of
Yeah.
depression.
I could see social media because for
Oh, yeah.
me, I mean, even just a little bit that I post on Instagram and stuff, if I see a post not doing well, it really does actually upset me. Like if, especially one that I, if I put my heart
Mhm.
and soul into, and then I see it just not do very well, I'm like, did that actually suck? Like, did I not do good enough or something? You know what I
Am
mean?
I horrible? Yeah.
Exactly, and it really does. It messes you up, but I understand that too from a standpoint of seeing like all these models and
Yep.
fitness models and stuff on Instagram, and I go through there and I'm like, dude, like, but you got to remember that those people, they also could be Photoshop, but a lot of them spend majority of their life inside the gym or strict. That's their job, so they are
Mhm.
strictly doing that every day nonstop. They don't have a normal 9 to 5 like you and I have. So I mean, it's just you got to be careful with what you put into your brain through your eyes, honestly. So
Yeah, so we've talked about a lot of the negative connotations that video games have in the media's eyes and just the general population. I mean, the general population believes that video games do cause violence. I would actually like to also talk about some benefits of video games that has been documented by science. So let me read just part of this article and talk about that. So, some games that require motion by users provide more intense exercise than unstructured outdoor play. According to a 2015 study in Games for Health journal that tracked players with accelerometers, sports video games such as bowling and golf call for users to emulate moves of real players, and dance games require users to perform vigorous activity. Now, I think the majority of players aren't actually doing that stuff, right? Obviously, Dance Dance Revolution's dying. I think the last
yeah,
one's coming out soonish, or it just came out. But with VR, we talked about last week.
exactly.
You move a lot. And I know right now it's not a super widespread thing, but it's probably going to be soon. I think VR is going to become way more accessible to a lot of people.
Yeah, well, they actually have exercise programs that you can do in virtual
Mhm.
reality. But let me tell you something. I would throw up all over the place if I had my headset on doing physical activity, like moving around, walking around, and stuff. Just slow pace in a video game's one thing, but literally doing like jumping jacks, burpees, and crazy stuff with a VR headset. Yeah, I'm puking on site. Like there's no doubt in my mind. But yeah, I really do understand that. Like just video games in general make people happier, and like you said, but you have more to list off, right?
Oh, yeah, it goes further than that.
Yeah, keep
Video
going.
games can also provide meaningful activity for people with disabilities, according to Able Gamers, a nonprofit organization that provides specialized gaming equipment. In a survey of video game players with disabilities, the group found that users said they played for fun, but also to combat stress and depression and to engage in physical therapy for their hands. A third of
Hmm.
respondents said that video games helped with pain management. Microsoft just came out with that controller for Xbox, or just Microsoft things in general, that was for disabled people.
Yeah.
I believe I've seen a lot of that on Reddit, and that's awesome, right? I mean, that's including people, but it's also helping people. I mean, that's physical therapy to a degree. Um, that's also cognition and all that stuff. So video games have so many benefits. I
Hmm.
mean, studies have proven that time and time again, especially the cognitive side of that.
Yeah,
Do you know what a meta-analysis is?
I did not.
So a meta-analysis is basically a study that doesn't research anything new, but it essentially takes a bunch of other studies, piles them all together, and then figure out what's the general theme.
Hmm.
So two meta-analyses published in Psychological Bulletin in 2017 by an international team of researchers with over 250 references spanning a 15-year period concluded that games can improve cognitive abilities of players. They found that video game players scored higher in tests of attention, perception, cognitive flexibility, and spatial cognition. Um, so there's, we said before, there's so many benefits to video games, and it's just a shame that they have such a bad rap, and they have for a long time now.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it is. It sucks that they're just considered, and not from the young generation again, but normally from the older generation, that they're pretty much the devil's work. That they're really not, because
Mhm.
like I said, and this goes back to the VR thing with VR chat. I literally had so much fun just
Mhm.
talking to people. I have no idea who they are. Just having a good, genuine time with genuine conversations. I mean,
Right.
most of the time was, Show me the way. Show me the way. Like literally nonstop, all the time. And then you are not the queen.
Do you know the way?
Yeah, and then just spitting everywhere. I mean, and
Yeah.
it was genuinely a lot of fun. And actually, when I was playing VR chat, I was going through a tough time, and I was really upset as it was. And then that really did actually help me, be like, all right, the world's not actually that bad. Like there are actually good people out there. And I feel like in today's society, I feel like the media, news channels really choose the worst things in the world to show people. Like there's nothing happy that ever happens on the news, I don't feel like.
You
So
need those views, man.
exactly. So and it becomes almost like an entertainment for sadness, the news does. So I want to play video games instead of worrying about the news and watching the news, and actually just enjoy my time playing video games and having fun with friends. So I don't want to. I don't care about the news, to be honest with you.
I get all my news sources from Reddit, so it's fine.
Exactly. So it's like I just don't, and I don't see it ever happening. I don't see video games ever being banned from the United States, at least. I don't see it happening. Violent video games getting banned, video games being banned in general. I know that in other countries, especially in Germany. Germany has a ton of video games that are banned. I mean,
Really?
yeah, they have. Have you ever played Area 51?
Mm-mm.
So Area 51 has been banned. They released a censored version for it in Germany. All of the Call of Duties are basically banned.
I mean, kind of makes sense
Yeah, that's true.
to a degree, at least. At least the initial, World War II, World War One ones.
Yeah, they banned Dead Space. I mean, that's crazy to me that I'm happy that I live in the United States and that I don't have to really necessarily
USA.
yeah
USA.
I don't necessarily have to worry about that stuff. So I
Right.
don't feel like in the United States it'll be banned.
Wow.
I'm kind of treading on thin water here, but I feel like the United States, with the way that the country's run, basically, with the freedom that we have, I feel like if they banned video games or stuff like that in general, I feel like they'd have a rough time with that. Like taking guns away and certain things like that. So, but that's getting more in a political standpoint. So we'll get away from that a little bit. But
Dangerous territory.
it
to be
is.
treaded.
It is. That's why I said thin ice, baby. I'm getting off this, baby, before it breaks. So I mean, going back to video games and violence, like we've already said, I don't feel like it causes any more violence in a person's nature than they're already in tune to do in their life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the only connection that's been made when it comes to quote unquote aggressive behavior because of video games is very, very minuscule.
Yeah.
And essentially what that is like if you're playing a violent video game, heart rate's gonna be going a little higher, you're gonna be hype, right? There are moments right after where you're still fueled. But 10 minutes, 20 minutes after, you're fine. You're back to normal. I mean, look at your, a father figure or people who just get super hyped for sports. They're screaming, they're yelling,
Oh, exactly.
they're jumping up and down. It's the same.
I can't
same
tell you
thing.
how many times I've heard people say, that coach sucks balls. I'm gonna that mother, and I'm like, dude, relax, relax, scale it back, dude. So and I can almost feel like older people are watching us. Like they'll see like little clips of like people rage on video games. They're like, my God, that guy's gonna kill everybody. It's like, no, it's not. People have rage, but it doesn't mean that they're gonna go insane. So
Yeah.
I just feel like they and it goes back to the media too. They literally just choose whatever's bad. Like they probably show people raging from video games. They're like, look what it does, and it's like, no, it doesn't.
And that's the other thing. Like, that's the argument that can be made when it comes to like rage. Like, if you're raging at something, more than likely you care about that thing a lot, right? It's the
Yeah.
same thing going back to the sports. people get hype and angry and rage and jump up and down because they're super into it.
Yeah, they're
How is
passionate.
that any different than video games?
Exactly. And
Right? Now, obviously, you need to learn to control that just as people
yeah,
watching sports do. But at the same time, like we're humans. We feel things. We have emotions.
exactly. And I really feel like people need to just relax. To be
Mhm.
honest, when it comes to stuff like this, just relax, get all your facts straight before you say something stupid, and then come back to it. And I feel like in this day and age, whatever one person says, like Facebook is literally the mastermind of this. I feel like people just put on there anything that's not even true or factual, and then people start to believe. My grandmother does it all the time. She'll like be reading stuff
Mhm.
on Facebook, and she's like, "Oh, that's 100% true." And all you have to do is fact check it, and then you're like, "No, that's 100% false what you just read."
Yeah.
So I feel like people just take pictures and take things, and it's just the old thing of time, people taking everything out of context and then
Yep.
just saying, oh, this is what's going on. So and I feel like people that argue for it, like you and I, you got to do it. You have to argue for what you believe in, or otherwise it'll just get pushed to the side, and one day it could get banned, and that would be terrible. But
Yeah, but like, and definitely advice that I have comes to that. Yes, have a voice, but like, chill, be
yeah.
calm, be collected. At the end of the day, what you have to say most likely won't make a difference.
Hmm.
And people know what they know, and I put that in quotes. They know what they know. People believe what they want to believe. And oftentimes, unless they trust you and you trust them, and you've had these hard conversations before, it doesn't matter what you say. They're not going to listen to it. You're going to be talking to a wall. So just stay calm. No need to get dragged into anything aggressive. Just
Yeah,
be chill. There's no need to add fuel to the fire.
exactly. And I mean, and that just goes down with like basic skills. If somebody's getting violent about something because you're arguing your point, just walk away from it. It's not worth it. But I feel like in the gaming industry, I feel like it's coming on strong, and it's going to be the greatest thing we've probably seen in our lifetime. I believe, like I've said before, and I'm still calling it, that video games will be bigger than sports one day,
Oh yeah.
because my little brother, he's not sitting there watching football. He's sitting there playing video games, playing in tournaments whenever he can, and he's having fun with it. And I
Mhm.
feel like a lot of people of the younger generations are, playing video games. They don't care about sports that much. They don't care about, the crazy stuff in the world. All they care about is having fun. And you know what? A lot of people say, I'm so scared of the new generation and what they're going to cause. I'm actually excited to see what the new generation of people are going to do, because I feel like
Mhm.
they're more, they're fresh, and they come into a new society that they see as broken and that they see as messed up, and they're willing to fix it. But I don't know. I'm hopeful. Let's just say that. Very hopeful.
I think you're definitely right when you say video games are going to be way bigger than sports. I mean, this article says that majority of children and teens are gaming. 80% of children ages 2 to 10 play video games.
Hmm.
That is a lot of kids.
Yeah, and then the other 20%, they're just losers, but whatever. I'm just
They do
playing.
nothing all day, yeah.
I'm just playing.
But that's a lot of kids, and
But all right, so going back to this, they say that 80% of people are playing video games. So are 80% of people going to cause like a massacre?
right,
You know what I mean?
exactly,
Like, come on,
exactly.
come on. That's ridiculous to ever even think or imagine. So
You're it's and we're not trying to belittle the tragedies that happen, right? Those should never
exactly, yeah.
happen in the first place, ever. That's why it's a tragedy. But they're so far and few between. And yes, you'd be like, "Oh, look at all the other countries. How many other countries have, the school shootings and all this?" Like, how many other countries have the amount of guns that America has? And I'm not saying guns are the problem. Do not pull me into that argument. You don't wanna have that argument with me. But, like, look at Europe. How many knife attacks do they have? How many acid attacks do they have?
Yeah.
It's people take I think the issue with all of this is that people don't know. People think they know what they're saying, but they don't, right? So they take something that they think makes sense to them, but just doesn't make sense in the context. Like, you have to take the context. Um, the United States is a massive, massive place with a lot of people. You
Yeah,
can't compare the United States to like Norway, where they have 4 people in the entire country. You
exactly.
just can't, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Um,
I think just people need to learn, get some knowledge in you. Stay in school, kids.
exactly. And I wanted to correct one thing that I said. I said that Germany had some of those games banned. They actually had a ban towards people under 18. Which
Okay.
the United States does have sort of the same thing. They're not necessarily like strictly enforced. But if you go into GameStop, you try to buy like a what are games even rated? Are they rated? What are they rated anymore? M for mature.
MT,
That's right.
E10, E.
Yeah, and then I think there's A too, isn't there? For
I
adults
think
only, I believe.
I think that's like porn games and all that. I don't think.
It is.
Yeah, I've never seen that in a GameStop.
No, I don't think that they would sell that. But anyway, for like mature, you literally have to have somebody, I believe 18 or older, to be in there with you to
Yes,
buy the
true.
video game if you're under 18.
That's correct.
Which most of the time, which is funny because the same parents.
Digital download.
Exactly. Well, yeah, that's one. That's kind of crazy to think about. That's the way to get around it. But I guess they figure that a kid won't have. Well, kids can get debit cards pretty young. I don't know. That's another thing for another time. But I feel like the same people that blame video games are probably the same people that were in the store with their child buying Grand Theft Auto. So it's
Yeah.
like, buying Grand Theft Auto for their kid. And it's like, if you didn't want that in your household, why'd you buy it? Research the game first and then see if it sticks to the morals of your family. If it doesn't, then don't let it come into your household. You're a grown adult. You're a freaking parent. Choose what you want to do with that. If you feel like your kid's not stable enough to handle Grand Theft Auto, don't give it to the kid. Like, you're the adult. You know what I mean?
Well, it's kind of, that reminds me of something back when I was younger. So I love my mom to death. I love her probably more than anybody else on this planet. But when I was in 4th grade, how old are you in 4th grade? Like 10, 9 or 10,
Something like
around
that.
there.
I'm not sure.
Young.
Very young.
We every month we would go out to see a movie in the theaters. Once a month, whatever. All 5 of us, the entire family.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom was talking to my dad. She's like, "Hey, let's go see that War of the Worlds movie." And with Tom Cruise.
Uh-huh.
And my dad's like, "Wait, are you sure you want to do that? You think that's a smart idea?" Because he had seen the trailer and he knew what it was, and my mom didn't. And she's like, "Yeah, it'd be fine. They'll love it." So there I am, Stu with his bowl of popcorn, sitting in a chair as people are dying and exploding. And have you seen that movie?
Yeah, I have.
Remember the scene where the dude's running and he trips and falls behind the car, and then the like needle tentacle thing comes down and stabs him and sucks up all his blood?
Yeah.
I was freaking sitting there.
Gosh, I remember.
I watched the entire movie. Me, my twin, my older brother who was a year older than us, we all watched it. We had nightmares for like weeks, Nick.
Exactly.
Stay informed.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm not going to say that my parents are great or that they're bad. I'll just keep them neutral in this podcast. But on October 27th, 2002, they bought me Grand Theft Auto Vice City. I was 11 years old at the time. I was banging every hooker and every stripper I could, baby, because that's what I was doing. So I mean, like, it is what it is. Stay informed if you're gonna buy your children these things, But at the same time, it's like, just because I play Grand Theft Auto at such a young age, I'm not out there doing anything crazy like that.
You mean you're not going out banging hookers left and right?
I'm not, and this is the infamous thing to do in Grand Theft Auto: bang the hooker and then kill her for the money back. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. I got a wife, I got an apartment. I got things to do.
You got cats and chinchillas.
I got cats and chinchillas, man. I can't do that today. So, I mean, and people are probably like, "Oh, they're making light of the whole situation." It's just so asinine to us to think that games cause video games cause video games. But it's just asinine to us to believe that violence comes from video games. Now, that's, trying to wrap this up because it has been, 44 minutes of talking. But
Woo!
that's not to say that, somebody that actually has a mental disability and then are more prone to violence, and then you give them a very violent video game, that necessarily couldn't cause something to happen, but that would go into the caretaker's hands to make sure that they never got access to that game or to that violence. So, like we said, it just really comes down to the parents knowing their children on a personal standpoint, like you should, if you're a good parent, and not giving them something that could potentially cause a very harmful situation to not only that person, but to others around them. And that's the best piece of advice that I can give as just a nice human being to another human being. You know what I mean? So I hate that tragedies happen. Sadly, they happen all over the world. If I could stop them, best believe I would. I just can't. You know what I mean? But we can sit here and inform people and try to help them make the best decision that they can when it comes to video games. But that's literally all we got.
Right.
So I really feel like this was a good podcast, honestly. And I feel like if you want to make your voice heard, to come with logical answers to the questions that that they will ask, and make sure that you keep them as informed as possible. But trying to wrap this up, as always, you guys can check us out at Gaming is the Mission on Instagram, at Get 'em Clan on Twitter, or not Twitter, Twitch, I'm sorry. We're not on Twitter, actually. I'm not a big fan of Twitter.
I don't have Twitter either.
And then obviously right here on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, like the video, and then also, Stu, throw your plug in.
Twitch.tv/3Us.
All we got was TV or Twitch TV /
did it cut out?
Yeah, it did.
Oh, yikes. So much for a plug, huh?
Yeah.
That's twitch.tv/I'm Stu. IMSTUUU.
Exactly. And you stream on when?
I try to stream almost every day except Wednesdays and Sundays.
Okay. So, as always, we thank you guys so much, and thank you for sticking around for this very long podcast, but something that we took very true to our heart, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned something. Also, if you have any questions or any concerns or anything, be sure to leave them down in the comments below, and we'll catch you guys again in the next one. Peace. Peace.